So I've been thinking hard about different types of videos to make this channel cool, and I figured I need to do a top 10 eventually, because everybody does that, until I realized that everybody does that, and top 10s aren't very interesting, because they're always top 10 opening themes, or top 10 anime, or top 10 disappointments, or top 10 anime of the season, and stuff like that. And then it came to me, what if I did a top 10 on something nobody does top 10s on? Top 10s on things that I completely came up with myself, original IP top 10s. And I decided to do a top 10 first episodes of anime, my favorite top 10 first episodes of anime. And I put a lot of thought into what the criteria of a good first episode is. And the criteria I come up with is A, gives you a good feel of the series, eases you into the characters, gives you a taster. B, how rewarding is it to come back to when you've watched the rest of the show? And C, how much does it represent the show's appeal? So with all that considered, these are my 10 favorite first episodes of anime. And the best part about this list is that regardless of whether you've seen any of these shows or not, this list's for everybody, because it's only the first episode, so you can consider it kind of a recommendations list as well. So, let's get right into it.
Number 10, Eden of the East. Episode 1 of Eden of the East is strong for pretty basic reasons. It's awesomely detailed art and strong comedic aspect are only surpassed by the amount of questions the series presents us with, inviting the viewer to watch this series and find out the answers. It's debatable how well that series ultimately answered a lot of these questions, but regardless of how the show turned out narratively overall, this episode remains solid and intriguing. Its weird and wacky sense of humour and eminently likable characters manage to carry every scene, and once the episode takes a more socio-political stance, it becomes clear that the series has much more to offer than dick jokes, specifically the enigmatic Takizawa. Eden of the East may hold the record for the fastest I found myself invested in a couple in anime, thanks to superb dialogue and staging. This show may be kind of a giant mess, but this first episode was definitely worth getting excited for. Number 9, Prison School. I'm gonna go ahead and say that in addition to being my favourite anime of the summer season, Prison School may have had my outright best premiere episode 2015 so far. Not that Fool's really putting up much of a fight. Between this non-obtrusive setup and excellent art and animation, Prison School episode 1 manages to get us accustomed to both the characters, setting, and overall sense of humour with exceptional proficiency. But of course, the thing that really makes this episode special is its onslaught of A-grade comedy. The entire episode endlessly bombards the viewer with the legendary gags and set pieces that immediately convinced me that this show was going to be a good time. From the ridiculously juvenile characters to the gratuitous violence to the pissing in the woods, every scene seems to one-up the last for memorability and sheer laugh-out-loud comedy. The fact that the show managed to maintain this quality throughout its 13-episode run is an achievement in its own right, so mad respect to Prison School for dealing out some of its best cards from day one.
Number 8, Kill La Kill. Forget first episodes for a sec. If this were a list ranking my favourite opening scenes in anime, Kill La Kill might just take the gold. The series explodes into form from the very beginning, giving the viewer a crash course in all things Kill La Kill in the first 2 minutes. In addition to being one of the most striking and memorable ways to kick off an anime, the series showcases a level of craftsmanship and forethought in design that you just don't find in a lot of TV anime, especially original series. Every sequence is so evocative and creatively presented that they just burn themselves into my retina from the moment I saw them. Every character is introduced with the pomp and circumstance of a god, from the bouncy wackiness of Marco to the epic towering authority of Satsuki. Kill La Kill utilizes scope and scale like it's child's play, with an unprecedented understanding of how to deliver tension and catharsis to the viewer through its presentation. Kill La Kill's animation tells stories and communicates ideas all on its own, in ways that the vast majority of anime just aren't capable of. It can be both hilarious and dramatic simultaneously without breaking a sweat. The fusion of hyper-detailed blood-pumping fight scenes with comedic and masterfully timed panning shots, that incredible dynamic zoom effect beginning at the top of Honoji Academy before rapidly encompassing the entire sloping city, all in the name of introducing Ryuko and making it clear that she's got her work cut out for her, followed by that bold, epic logo, Kill La Kill. It's all here, present and accounted for in this phenomenal first episode. This is how you kick off a series. Number 7, ToraDora. Okay, let's dial things back a bit. ToraDora kicks itself off in some very clever and effective ways, in addition to being massively memorable. The series goes out of its way to show the viewer early on who the principal characters are, how others see them, and how that contrasts with how they see themselves, as well as dropping some clever hints as to where they're ultimately going. Ryuji is introduced to us as a super nice guy whose creepy eyes are getting in the way of his rose-colored high school life. Meanwhile, Taiga is introduced as a fiery, headstrong, but secretly soft-cored girl who wants to overcome her negative image and win the heart of her crush. Through a series of hilarious events, the two realize their similarities and collaborate to create a duo more capable of achieving their goals. It's pretty simple, but it's still massively effective, and all of this is communicated in the first episode. We understand each character implicitly, how they relate to one another, and their motivations in the span of 22 minutes, with such an easily defined rom-com template that it coaxes the viewer to watch more and see where it all goes. It's also really refreshing to see the series playing to its strengths after witnessing some of the weird decisions it makes in its second half, making this episode's balance of comedy and pathos even more satisfying. There's a reason ToraDora is pretty much considered to be the quintessential anime romantic comedy, and this episode makes it as clear as any. Number 6, Bakemonogatari. The interesting thing about this episode to me is that it barely feels like a first episode at all. Bakemonogatari begins in a way that will be impossible to understand for a first-time viewer, while still managing to be incredibly evocative and engaging, largely due to Shaft's inventive design sense and pacing, but also due to the unique presentation of the narrative. When we meet Araragi and all this crazy anime-like stuff starts happening to him, we assume he's in the same boat as us, confused and wanting answers. It isn't until approximately halfway through the episode that we learn he's actually a human-vampire hybrid that's well versed in dealing with apparitions and spirits. In true light novel fashion, the structure of the Monogatari narrative is awkward and insular, to the point that I honestly thought I was watching the wrong season by mistake. However, I actually managed to be a positive in this case, increasing the viewer's intrigue in the world and subverting our expectations in ways that few shows have done before. Throughout the episode, we see that Araragi already has a number of relationships that aren't explained to us in a decent amount of detail. Characters appear with little to no context given on who they are or how they relate to Araragi, further encouraging the viewer to watch this series and make sense of everything. It just doesn't present itself with the usual trappings of a supernatural fantasy series, allowing the natural chemistry of the characters, superb dialogue and creative framing to carry the episode. The best compliment I could give this franchise, it may be one of the most interesting in anime, and this episode shows us how it achieves this through the most unexpected means. Number 5. Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann. Okay, we're really getting into the good stuff now. First things first, episode 1 begins with a clip from the future, showing us immediately how vast the show's scope will come to be, how far the show plans on going. It utilizes the same phenomenal dynamic zoom I mentioned in Kill la Kill to the same effect, to establish a sense of scale both in a literal and literary sense. The spiral concept is utilized immediately, shown to be literally piercing the heavens, reaching feverishly for that never-ending finish line. Naturally, all this foreshadowing is massively rewarding to viewers that have already seen the show, but more importantly, it bigs up the events of the series to levels transcending just a simple fictional story and taking on the qualities of a legend, an epic, a timeless, super detailed monument of self-actualization and glory. The episode is so dense and masterfully written that you could watch it multiple times in a row and still notice things that you didn't before. This episode introduced us to our beloved main cast flawlessly, and immediately manages to make us empathize with their feelings. Of course we know the surface is real, we're on it. The dark, barren pit that Simon and Kamina call home really drives in that feeling of oppression, and we share the characters' longing for freedom. We want to see them rise above their limitations, continue to strive for that next level, achieve all the things everyone said they couldn't, and when they finally do, it's just as incredible as you thought it would be. In that one instance, the world opened up to them. New friends, new enemies, new locations, new cultures, new challenges, new heights. It's not a perfect world. It's certainly dangerous and difficult to adjust to, but the point is it's a world of infinite possibilities. A world where these two can become whoever they want to. Forget the context, this episode was a masterpiece from the very moment it aired. Number 4. Neon Genesis Evangelion. The first episode of Eva is legendary. From beginning to end, this episode is 100% classic. From the masterful directing to the excellent setting establishment and even the ambience of wildlife, the show establishes its moment-to-moment density within seconds. Details about the characters and world building aren't exposited to the viewer through some light novel style internal monologue, rather the viewer is allowed to naturally engage with the setting just by being exposed to it, soaking in all of its subtleties more organically over the course of the episode. Shinji, Misato, Rei, and especially Gendo are some of the most effective and memorable introductions in anime history due to their excellent framing and build-up. For now we're only given a taster of who these people are and presented the most outwardly apparent aspects of their personalities, but even at this point the innate likability and presence of the cast is incredibly impressive, boosting the viewer's desire to learn more about them. We can quickly understand why Shinji feels the way he does, even if we can't fully empathize with him yet. Even though we don't know anything about Rei, the sight of an injured child clearly being pushed at her limit is more than enough to give the viewer a newfound sense of urgency and emotional investment, as well as giving Shinji a newfound sense of responsibility. Tons of hints at character motivations and interesting symbolism are cleverly tucked into the episode, as well as a climactic ending perfectly baiting viewers to come back for episode 2 to see how it all wraps itself up. Overall, the episode is perfect, and so chock full of meaningful shots, iconic lines, and foreshadowing that it hugely rewards rewatching. To me, the moment that really solidifies this as a masterful first episode in particular is a split-second shot of Rei's apparition towards the beginning. Returning viewers already understand why this is a massively important moment, but I think that even for first-time viewers, her presence here is likely to have a pretty substantial effect on how the audience perceives not only the episode, but the series as a whole. Oh, also, I think there's a giant robot in there at some point, or something like that. Number 3. Psychopaths. You cannot begin a series with the level of style and intrigue that Psychopaths managed to pull off. Just like Gurren Lagann, the series begins with a scene foreshadowing some of the most climactic events to come, and of course the primary rival. The viewer is then treated to a series of utterly unbelievable establishing shots, showcasing the glowing, busy, dystopian city of the series in the most impactful way possible. Akane Tsunemori is introduced to the MWPSB at the same time she's introduced to the audience. An excellent framing and choreography of all these shots and these scenes make her introduction particularly effective. Throughout these early scenes, the show uses a lot of clever techniques to familiarize the viewer with the tone, pacing, theming, and even humor of Psychopaths, and clues us into the show's cyberpunk setting with a rarely seen level of grace. The show also uses all the writing styles that I've slowly come to appreciate after bearing witness to so many shows that simply have narrators explain the plot to us. All of the conversations in the early part of the series are crucial to the viewer's understanding of the show's setting, but never stop feeling like real conversations that the characters are having. Even when whole scenes are built around dialogue, that dialogue remains relevant to a consistent theme, while also fleshing out the setting in ways that feel completely natural. Psycho Pass always manages to make these scenes feel less like dialogue between characters and more like conversations between people, which is helped by the solid voice performances. Cleverly weaving info dumping into the narrative of the series without ever seeming intrusive or breaking my immersion is an important distinction between the good and the great for me. As we slowly follow Akane on her first mission and the tension steadily begins its rise, we witness firsthand the flaws inherent in the Sibyl system minutes after being introduced to it, making it clear right away that this isn't going to be a series with easily defined bad guys or clearly evident answers to her proposed philosophical questions. In other words, nothing that Akane has studied or experienced is going to prepare her for what the series has in store for her, leading to her making a number of gut decisions. As we see in this episode, the Sibyl system's number one priority is to neutralize any potential threats as efficiently and systematically as possible, whereas Akane's number one priority is to do the most amount of good for the largest possible number of people, immediately creating a conflict between them. The most impressive instance of characterization that the episode has to offer is Akane's insubordination when she instinctually shoots Kogami. This scene alone makes it clear that Akane is not the docile little rookie that the viewer probably pegged her for at the beginning. Her risky and unauthorized actions on her very first mission make it very clear that this is a person with a firm moral backbone that will only become stronger with knowledge and experience. But at this point she's still hesitant and vacillating, a sensation that's captured perfectly by one of the final shots of her sat alone by this giant bustling city. A number of people have stated that the most important aspect to creating an effective cyberpunk setting is taking a thought-provoking sci-fi concept and applying it to a grounded and relatable real-world landscape, allowing the drama to be built around how society reacts to it and what that says about our current culture. When you successfully execute this, suddenly the drama and conflicts in a series become more applicable to our actual lives and offer a social and political commentary much more resonant than what could be expected from your average fantasy setting. Psycho Pass nails this, and in its first episode no less, with enough details about the world building and characters withheld from the viewer to make you feel compelled to follow through with it. Number 2. Michiko to Hatchin. This episode may be the absolute most successful at making me want to watch the rest of the series, with so much flavour and intrigue that I was pretty certain this show would end up being one of my favourites by the end of the episode alone. Michiko to Hatchin is an original series by Sayo Yamamoto and Studio Mangler about the sexy convict Michiko and her estranged daughter Hana chasing happiness and relentlessly seeking out the man that abandoned them both, while doing what they can to stay one step ahead of the cops. The show is a flawless example of the original Mangler style, from the overt Western influenced directing and pacing to the gorgeous and detailed Central American setting to the bombastic art and sound design. When we get introduced to Hana in the first episode, it's made clear to us that her wholly abusive foster family only keeps her around for the sake of extortion, bribing and threatening her when they feel it's necessary. Hana immediately leaves an impression, not only for how well she deals with her terrible situation, but also for exhibiting a level of maturity and perceptiveness far exceeding the expectations of a 9-year-old, making her immediately interesting and likable. The fortitude with which she faces all of her problems are not only inspirational, but make the moment where Michiko spectacularly introduces herself that much more rewarding. This family that had bullied and manipulated Hana for so long is suddenly being totally whipped into submission by this stylish, enigmatic woman, totally shattering any control they may have had over her before. Michiko is depicted as stubborn, capable, and incredibly headstrong, effortlessly escaping a maximum security prison with goals that the viewer can't fully comprehend at this point. She's rude, tactless, and uncompromising, directly contrasting with the comparatively meek, thoughtful, and diligent Hana. She represents the kind of power and freedom that Hana has never experienced before, and swiftly rescues her from her controlling and neglectful family that raised her. It's fun, frantic, it's kinda wacky in a way, but above everything else, it's massively exciting and filled me with incredible expectations that thankfully the series not only lived up to but exceeded. Number 1. Lucky Star. Okay, is this really surprising to anyone? Nothing tops the Choco Cornets. I've already detailed my relationship with Lucky Star in an earlier video, but I really need to make it clear how much this episode changed everything for me. When I watched this episode for the first time, I slowly realized I had found something that would end up being massively important to my life, and I'm not talking about Lucky Star, I'm talking about anime as a whole. This strange take on storytelling that I had never seen before, the super expressive art and adorable character designs, the directionless yet charming dialogue, the delightful soundtrack, the tranquil pacing, every little detail. I felt like I had stumbled upon an entire medium by chance that had so much to offer me, like the potential for new all-time favorites was endless. It was such a surreal experience that it inspired me to completely let go of any inhibitions I had and just dive into this strange, amazing world of entertainment, and so I did. I consumed show after show, story after story, countless characters, worlds, and ideas. It's been fun, but in that time I've definitely changed. I can no longer feel the excitement of starting up a new series and getting immersed in everything it has to offer the way I used to. I don't usually let myself get as hyped for a show as I used to, since there's always this nagging feeling that the whole thing could just cave in when I least expect it. I guess you could say I've become the slightest bit jaded with time, but I guess that was inevitable. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy with the way things are now. I've definitely grown and my passions have developed, but that feeling of wonder and excitement for an industry I knew nothing about is all but dead at this point. I know the minutiae of anime production and how difficult it can be for a studio or creator to make ends meet in the current anime climate. I'm well accustomed to the soulless, creatively bankrupt mediocrity that continues to pollute and saturate the industry. I've seen the community for what it is and have experienced the full extent of its evil. All of these things have changed me in the way I think, except when it comes to this series. Like I said before, Lucky Star are the only anime that actually takes me back to that beautiful, naive mindset I used to have, and after all the things I've seen and all the places I've been, it only seems to have gotten better with time. I'm pretty certain that no first episode of anime will ever be able to top how special this one is to me in terms of impact and memorability. But who knows, maybe something will surprise me someday. And that's my list. What's your favourite first episode of anime and why? Do you even have one? Is that a question you've ever considered asking? Was this even a good idea? Let me know how stupid you think I am in the comments.